Another episode of Celeste the Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, and I have a special guest who comes on once a month. I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, yes, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a certified coaching consultant from Sacramento, California. Practice is based around a DISC assessment, or like to highlight practicing self-awareness without judgment. And so we use the assessment, if you're unfamiliar, it's basically a test that shows how we as individuals operate when it pertains to decision making, how we interact with others. It likes to show, it shows how we are when things are fine, our natural, when we wake up and roll out of bed and operate in the world, and then our adaptive of who we become when we're under stress or under pressure. And we can look at a series of things that we're doing and then put together solutions to get the changes we want if we're not living the life that we want.
I love that. As you're talking, when you talk about the adaptive, sometimes I don't think people realize they may be even just living in an adaptive state of high stress. And this assessment that Jermaine does, I've done it before. It's really a great tool where you have like kind of that data, that concrete data from somebody who doesn't even know you, just from a test. It's pretty accurate. And I think it's important, whether you decide to take the DISC assessment or not, to like look at and evaluate like how you are responding to things. I remember seeing a post about how we're breaking down, like our bodies are breaking down because we're living under so much stress.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't even recognize that we create the stress by how we are looking at things. Does that make sense when I say like how we're looking at things, like the way our perspective is on a situation or the thing we think we have power over or not? We can really create more stress for ourselves. And the way you are may not be who you are. It may be just who you are under pressure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I think we create a whole world
Yeah.
in and around us based upon how we perceive what's happening.
Yeah.
And what we decide to do with that. And then for some of us, like specifically with the adaptive part, is that when we just stay in that reactionary space, we just constantly staying in. I mean, that's where we're really burning ourselves out.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we can become fooled into thinking, oh no, this is just how I am. And the reality is like, no, it's actually not. Like this is the reaction or the defense that we've built up to this particular thing. And then the thought of how often it's gonna show up. So we're always on guard, or we're always a certain way just because we think that's us and that's life. And it can be for some people it's freeing, and for some people it's disappointing when they find out how much of what they're doing is not their natural.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about the fact that it's like a survival mechanism, right? And so as you begin to recognize some of the patterns that you're operating under, be graceful with yourself, because a lot of times that was the only way you knew how to survive. I always have compassion for people that are working on change because of how challenging it is when you've been living and operating a certain way for so long. And sometimes people are like, it feels like a battle. I say it kind of is when you think about it, because your system is really like is rejecting this new way that you're trying to give it, because it's been so conditioned to be a certain way in survival mode. And so as you work on creating change, know that it's possible, but like it takes time.
Yes, that's why I'm a firm believer in the self-awareness without judgment.
Yeah.
So when we decide to make the change, regardless if we've been this way for 5 years, 50 years, however long, accepting and being okay, this is how I was before, for whatever reason got me there. And these are the reasons why I want to change, and that's okay. And it's going to be a process making those adjustments, and that's okay, to get me to this new space that I want to be in. And that's okay. Like it's not a good or bad, right or wrong, because I want to change, or how long I was the other way before I started to make the changes.
Yeah, that's really good. And so those are for people that are thinking about the change and stuff. But I want to go into like people that are working on change, that have noticed some patterns and have, and I see this a lot where people are, we create systems and things that they can do. And when I talk about the change that people want to make, and I point out the ways that is not in alignment with what they're saying, it can be hard. And so I think about like what is important to you, and thinking about how people can look at if they're doing what they say they want to do. Like, how do you work with people around that? Because I think logically we have an idea of what we want. There's no easy way to that point, and so as people are saying like, this is what I want, how do you help people kind of reconcile with like, well, you say you want to lose weight, but you're at McDonald's every night, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's something that's really literal, that's easy for me to define. But there's other things that people really want to work on changing, speaking up more, right? How do you work with people around that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was we have the honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's keeping the same example, if it's I want to lose weight and get in better shape, but the McNuggets are calling, okay, well, let's have an honest conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it you really want? Because ideally, perfect world, you may say, look, I want a 6-pack, but I want to be able to eat McNuggets at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so which is honestly more important? Okay, well, I guess it's the 6-pack. Okay, so now we have to be honest about which is more important, so we can start putting things into place for that. You may have an honest moment where the McNuggets are more important. For
the moment, right? Not the long goal.
Yeah, you may sit there and say, you know what? I'm not willing to give these things up, or willing to change these practices. As much as I say this is the goal that I want, I'm not willing to let go or forego these other things that are in the way. Let's have the honest conversation.
But say it, right? Like, be real with yourself.
Yeah, it's like saying if you get a personal trainer to work with you 4 days a week, but every time you leave the gym, you go to Dairy Queen.
I was at Burger King's every time after the gym before I realized.
So after a while, it's like, okay, we save the money you're giving the trainer, free up the trainer's time to work with somebody who would rather have different results, and then just go to Dairy Queen or do whatever it is you want to do. But like, so when there's the conflict, sometimes the conflict is because the goal is not really ours. Like,
tell me what you mean when you say that.
So if you're constantly distracted, you're not studying school because you say you're trying to get straight A's, but you don't really care about straight A's. You're doing it for somebody else. Okay. You're trying to forego the drive through and go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week to be a certain weight or a certain size or whatever, because you believe that's what you're supposed to look like, or somebody else looks that way, but you're completely okay with whatever your current.
So that means they're not committed to the plan. They're not committed to it.
It's not their goal.
It's not their goal.
Some people don't care about a big house and a lot of money. Some people don't care about being a size whatever. Some people don't care about and if you're doing things for external reasons, there's going to be always conflict because you're doing what's not genuinely you, and you're fighting with who genuinely is you.
Damn, and I think a lot of people don't even realize who generally is them because of all the distractions and the ways in which our society kind of shows you or tells you what success should look like.
Yes. Oh. And so if that may be why you keep having confliction with sticking to the plan, it's because the plan isn't really yours.
It's not realistic sometimes too.
Yeah, well, and delusion is fine if it's yours.
Yeah. Like
if I'm trying to be the richest person in the world, that may sound delusional to somebody, but it is somebody's truth. Like if you're trying to do something, first off, is this my dream? Yeah,
or my parents or society.
And because if you're having conflict, sticking with it, that's the first. So when working with somebody, is this really what you want to do? Why do you want to do this? Why is this dream important to you?
That's good.
And so then when we can establish, okay, this is why. And if we qualify that this is my dream, this is what I want to do. Okay. So now what are the things that are getting in the way of that dream? What are these conflicts you have? And you just like, man, the McNuggets just be calling me. I drive by and I can smell
that smell. They say they put the smell in the air that's like a drug.
Yeah, it's like, man, I just can't even, man, okay. I just have to hit the drive-through. Okay, well, if that's a major thing, that's a roadblock of you making it to the gym on your way home, this is where we start to create the culture, which is steps and implementation of, okay, maybe you don't drive anymore. So we go to the gym, I pick you up because I'm not tempted to pull over in the drive-through when it's over. So if I pick you up, we go to the gym and then we go home. We've now removed a percentage of those opportunities that keeps derailing you. You know, so sometimes after we can identify, yes, this is my goal. We can identify what are the roadblocks in the goal. Now we can start putting something in place to deal with said roadblocks in the goal. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense because, you know, understanding why it's important is important, right? And then thinking about the barriers, because there are real barriers that, I mean, we're talking about something literal, but I think about maybe a work conflict with a coworker, where you do have to really sit next to them and you can't get around it, and you struggle with their communication. And it's like, okay, maybe I'm just making up this on the fly. Maybe I email them because I want to make sure what I'm saying is not getting tangled up and it being perceived in a different way, right? So really creating a different kind of avenue to get to that, to the point that you need to get to, where you don't have to really verbally talk to this coworker, but you know what, maybe I'll do the email. Because a lot of times some of the tweaks that need to be made are simple, but because people are so caught up in the like pain of it, they don't, it's hard to see the picture. I always say, like, if I'm looking at a picture, I can see the full picture, but when you're in it, it's hard to see the full picture, right? And so a lot of times when I'm working with people and they're talking about these things, and I'll say, you know, what about X, Y, and Z? It's very simple. I'm not a genius. I'm not Albert Einstein, I promise you. But I'm on the outside looking in. Believe me, on the other side, where some stuff, I'd be like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. If my friend gave me advice. So I'm just telling you, I'm just like you. It's not no like miracle I'm providing. It's just that I'm getting that kind of outside lens. And so being able to identify the barriers and work on a solution is powerful because you start to feel empowered.
It is. And so if you identify what the issue is, okay, so say if that's the example, okay, what is my goal? My goal is to have this better work environment, or to be able to deal with people who are problematic, but I'm non-confrontational, or I have issues with that. Okay, then like I said, the normal way is I have issues when it comes to speaking up. So the email route. So the putting something in place that is starting to address that thing, until we can gradually start to work towards the, you know, the ability to start speaking up more, or the ability to start doing something. I think that the change, I guess I would say, like, making the actual change is like stepping over a puddle, though it feels like jumping the Grand Canyon. It's gonna feel different because it's new. But then that's when you're creating a new culture of what you want to do, creating a new environment, new steps. You're not used to working out 4 days a week. First couple of days, you're going to be sore. You're not used to being direct about things. First times, it's going to feel scary. You're going to worry about what the response is. More often than not, when we're worried about speaking up for ourselves, the image in our head of how we think it's going to go, nothing near what the actual experiences.
You know, what you just said about what's in our head is not near the experience. It goes back to our point on how you said earlier you can create a whole world of stress. Because your mind continues to look, like, if you keep that thought of, like, if I ask my coworker for that, if I ask my coworker for that report that they're supposed to give me, they're going to get so mad. And then you start looking for evidence where maybe they didn't see you and they didn't say hi. And you're like, oh my God, they're so mad, right? Your mind continues to work on perceiving things in the way that you're framing it. Yeah.
I remember working in an office once, in, you know, normal office setting where you have to go in and get reports from people or what have you. And I remember there was a coworker who was asked to go ask the supervisor about a particular file for something. And they just didn't want to bother them. They're like, they're going to get so upset. They're going to this. And they were like, at some point, look, just go. And so they went to the office and they spoke so quietly while the person was doing something that they didn't hear them.
Dang.
And so then when they came back, it was like, oh, they were busy. And so then someone had to go and do it for them. And it was like, oh, thanks, I've been waiting on this. It's like, oh, well, so-and-so was trying to get your attention. I guess you seem busy. Like, I never even knew they came in the room. Like the world that the first person, they heard a sound out of them and just
Yeah.
thought that it was irritation or frustration. So they left.
Yeah.
And the person
Yeah.
that they had directed it to never even knew that they'd even
I
walked in the
know.
office. And so sometimes we build up these whole,
Yeah.
like, oh, somebody's mad at me, someone's disappointed, someone's gonna be this. And kind of with me, it's always sidebars and analogies. There's a little video me and my friends were joking about that they show on like Instagram or something, and it shows like a man and a woman, like a couple walking through like an airport or something, and the guy is like, oh, let me keep an eye out on this person. Let me make sure that this person is not, a problem. Like he's going all this whole threat assessment. Meanwhile, the woman that's walking alongside of her, she's like singing songs in her head, like completely oblivious to what's happening. And for some of us, we'll sit there and think that we have this whole version of something that we think everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
And what they're thinking about couldn't be further from the world that we're living in.
Yeah.
And everyone is not as amped up about something or as concerned or as critical or as anything that we may create. And so we can easily find ourselves stressed to the point of where we're not doing what we need to do because we're worried about what could possibly happen.
Yeah. And I want to get into people that have been able to create that change. But I do want to say, because I enjoy teaching as I'm podcasting and as I'm thinking about somebody listening to this, I want you to know what a lot of times why this happens, why the person at Jermaine's job went in there softly and ran out without even speaking up. A lot of this stems from previous experiences, maybe childhood, maybe even adulthood, right? Previous experiences where the feeling feels similar and you're responding based off of that little child that maybe felt they were a burden to their parent, right? Yeah. That stuff can translate into your work relationships, your intimate relationships, your friendships. That's why I'm so passionate about relationships, is because I realize that we have our own like stuff that we're not dealing with, and we're projecting it on our relationships with other people. And so I just want you to kind of think about that, as you are listening to this, and may find something that feels familiar to you that a lot of times is due to something in the past.
Yeah, with that 100%. Like I said, with these all these sidebars, I swear I'm gonna be an old man on the porch with all these random stories about things. I was recently dealing with something with my right ankle. Like my right ankle was sore, and it was because my left knee had been a problem for so long. And so over the years, I had compensated my walk because of my left knee to where it started to show up in my right ankle.
Dang.
And so I think for a lot of us, we have issues in our marriage, which are the result of a longstanding issue with our parents.
Yeah.
You have an issue now communicating at work because of a longstanding issue that happened maybe in school. And so we've learned to compensate for something that happened before. We didn't fix it. We've just learned to adjust for it.
Yep.
And how it shows up today may not be the same as what it was before, but it's directly tied to what happened before.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
And so I completely agree with it. I think we have a lot of challenges that we face now because it may not look like what it looked like before, but it is the direct result of what took place before.
And it sucks that so many people, like this should be common knowledge. You have so many people in turmoil in different relationships, not recognizing, they're looking for this perfect fix, but sometimes it starts with you. Yeah. You're looking in the mirror. It's hard to hear, but it's true. So for people that are, they've done this work, right? And I work with people, and I'll say within like 3 months, changes start happening. And the first thing they say is they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe like a situation that they're dealing with. They would say like 3 months ago, like, I would have never been able to do this. I can't believe it's like they're in shock that they've been able to handle certain things the way they've been handling it Does that happen in your practice? And like, how do you think, what do you think about that and why it happens?
Yeah, that's so a couple of responses. So
Hmm.
one is sometimes it's excitement when the revelation is hit
Yeah, I
that
agree.
like I remember how I used to deal with this.
Hmm.
And then the opportunity presented itself, and I just found myself not even consciously thinking about doing it differently. Like
Hmm.
I'm so used to quieting down or mousing down or not asserting myself or not communicating or whatever the previous way was. And I
Hmm.
found myself doing all the things I'd been working on and that moment of empowerment.
Hmm.
Other times you get those moments of complete shock.
Hmm.
Like you look back and like, well, I did that. Like
I know.
and being honest, there's sometimes where there's fear
Yeah, that makes
that
sense.
when the shift is happening and the shift is noticeable, then it's like, oh, I'm out here now. like like change is happening, and now
Hmm.
I've practiced what I've learned,
Yep.
so I've shifted this tide. Now there's going to be new experiences that come with this new direction,
Hmm.
and I now need to make sure I'm maybe questioning if I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like I've been wanting things to be different for so long, and now they actually are, and
Yeah.
this is now new to me.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different energies and results that come from the shift.
Hmm. And I think about a lot of times people will, sometimes, as people are shifting and creating new avenues, unfortunately they stop, right? Because they feel so good. I see this a lot in the summertime. Well, so I'm in Massachusetts where the winter gets grueling. I remember when I first started my practice, I would get more, like now my sessions are always full because I've been
Uh-huh.
doing this for so long. But when I first started, my most busiest months were November through like March. The summer was not as busy. This is
Okay.
pre-pandemic. The summer was not as busy, but during the summer, people are getting sun. They're out in the streets. They're doing things with people. In the winter, and so people will start practices, feel good, and stop the practice,
Yeah.
not realizing the reason why they are able to make that shift because of the practices.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that for people that may be struggling in that area, just so people can know the importance of being able to continue doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it definitely happens a lot. Like this was a struggle. Now I figured it out. Now things are
Hmm.
better. So
Hmm.
instead of thinking, oh, let me maintain the thing I was doing because
Yeah.
things are better, it's, oh, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
Or I think I'm good now. Um, Focusing on the fact of like, okay, I started remembering what it was like before.
Hmm.
And being honest, that sometimes there are some things that you can scale back.
Hmm.
Some things don't require the same level of intensity or something as time goes by and progresses.
True.
Specific, like so with me on my end. So if we're implementing new systems to things that did not exist before, after they're put in place, they may not require as much direction.
Hmm.
Because now you actually have a system,
Hmm.
and so just stick with the system. Like you may
Hmm.
not need the interaction, but don't just abandon the system
Yeah.
because you may feel, there may be a degree of arrogance that may come in at times. Like, oh, I
Hmm.
got this. I don't need this. I'm good.
Right. Right.
Remembering, okay, there's a reason why things are running smoothly.
Hmm.
Um, and so whenever I get that starts to happen with some people where they're just like, okay, I don't need that stuff anymore. It's one of those things you almost be mindful of it, because if things start to come unraveled a little bit,
Yeah.
that's the first question. Are you sticking to the system?
Hmm.
Back to the original example. Okay, well, I was doing this, I was losing weight, I was in shape. Now I don't see the trainer as much, or I don't stick to the diet as much. Now I'm
Yeah.
starting to gain weight again. The first
Yeah.
question is going to be, are you sticking to the plan?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't think I needed it like that. And okay, well, that's why the
And a
scale.
lot of times it's like subtle, like things come up, things
Yeah.
change. Let's say you've been you've been meal prepping and making meals, but then one day you didn't have time to do it, and then you go to a drive-through, right?
Yeah.
And it's not the drive-through that's the issue. It's not McDonald's, it's not Dairy Queen, right? It's the intent after. Okay, I'm gonna have this today. I didn't have a chance. I'm on the fly. I'm eating on the
Yeah.
fly. I'm starving. Fine. But unfortunately, sometimes we end up doing things mindlessly, right? And then
Yeah.
it's easier to get back into the old patterns than it is to keep the new patterns that you're
Yes.
creating, especially when you just start. And my biggest word is intention, because it does require a lot of intention to change. It's not like you arrive. It's not like I went to therapy, worked on myself, and then I'm good. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things that I do. I look at it as I'm feeding myself, my spirit, right?
Yeah.
And if I don't feed myself, then I'm gonna feel like I'm starving. And literally with food, that's what happens, right? If you don't eat, you're going to be hungry. And a lot of times I find that spiritually, and I'm not talking about religion, it's, I think about like your inner self, it's starving. You're feeding it with social media, the news, the blog post, the movies, the reality TVs. That's literally what you're feeding yourself. And so like, I'll read the blogs. I'll do everything that I said I've done,
Yeah.
but I'm intentional about the way that I do it. And I think that's the disconnect that people have, is they don't realize how much they're allowing things around them to distract them from staying with the systems and the things. And one little inconvenience, it's like you kind of go backwards.
Yeah, I liken it to whenever I explain stuff, whatever, like those when we were kids, and everybody's age is relative. Old video games, like little Mario Brothers games or Pac-Man, whatever. Like once you clear a level, that level is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like you never go back to it. Like once you cleared it, it's done, and then you move on to the next one. A lot of us have that association when it pertains to learning things or practices or new systems. And I figured that out now. The level is cleared. I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, it's like you move past it, but it's still wide open. Like if these aren't you can fall back. You can get from 3 to 4 back to 2 if we're not mindful and intentional about what it is we're doing. So it's not like I figured out nutrition and working out, level cleared. I can eat whatever, I can work out whenever, that's unlocked, I'm good. It's like, no. That's why people who can lose 80, 90, 100 pounds with a strict regimen and a practice, and then gain back that plus an extra 20 or 30. We can get our marriage tight for 6 months after extensive couples retreats and counseling and working on stuff. Oh, things are good now. Then it's back to staying out, not talking, and get served some papers. Like this is it's intentionality. For back to the original question, what is it you want? What is the actual goal? And if keeping that first, then that means, okay, if this is what I'm working towards, this is what I want, then it needs, the things that I'm doing need to consistently be in alignment with that goal.
Yeah.
And if the goal ever changes, then having that honest conversation with ourselves.
Yeah, that's good. As you talk about marriage and or couples. Me and my husband, we meet weekly, and we have a little, I have a what is it called, a board where his goals, my goals, things we need to do for the week.
That's
and
nice.
there's been times where we do it on Sundays. Sundays we can't do it, so we move it to Monday. Like I'm gonna get it done, right? Because I understand the importance. And as I think about that, I think about individually, because I always talk about, if you're in a relationship, you really should be intentional about checking in what's going well, what's not going well, because healthy relationships, successful businesses aren't built by accident. They're built with intention.
Very much.
And I think about our individual selves, and I never thought about this, but we really should be thinking about, when are we meeting with ourselves, right? When are we checking in with ourselves? A lot of times we're not. And so that's something that's important. And, it's going to be a new year. 2024 is around the corner. And as much as I don't like New Year's resolutions, I do recognize the way that the energy around change tends to happen more around this time. So, as you're thinking about like resetting and change, think about that piece of like, I need to put myself on my calendar because some of my goals may have shifted, right? I may have started this job and said, I just want to do this part time, but then I'm like, what? I think I want to do this on my own, right? Like things change, but how could you know that you're growing out of a situation or a profession or whatever if you're not checking in with you? Because what's going to happen is you're just going to be there frustrated because you guess what? You're outgrowing the space that you're in. And so like as you're thinking about this like shift and we're talking about change and how challenging it is, make sure you're meeting with yourself on a regular basis.
That is so big because I've seen a lot of people who will do that in the lines of like, if you ask them, what's most important? My children are first. Like my children are everything. No. I get that. And I understand that when they were 4 and 6. And I get that when they were 10 and 12. I said, but they're 19 and 17 now. One's gone and one's getting ready to leave. And at no point did you recheck in with who you are, what you wanted, or what you needed to do. And I've seen so many adults now who are in their 40s and 50s that never checked back in with themselves, never checked in with their mate. Mm-hmm. And now they're looking across at strangers, twiddling thumbs because
the kids are out of the house.
The kids are gone, and there's no like, well, we put them for. I understand at the time that when that decision was made, but there at no point did we ever come back to the table to decide what are we going to do next. Mm-hmm. And so it's like at some point we, like I said, we make decisions reevaluating, is this still the goal? Mm-hmm. Is this still the dream? Is this still the practice? Is this still the way, education was first. I got that, but you graduated 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like, what are we doing? This job or this business or, okay, well, what are we talking about? Yeah. And if we're doing something different, that's fine. It's not a judgment on if you've changed your mind.
Nope. It's not. But
do we know we've changed our mind?
Exactly. And a lot of times because our mind, our system knows we're capable of more. Yeah. A lot of times we find ourselves struggling in where we are. And it just could be, and even friendships. Sometimes you may outgrow friendships where you're just not at the same level anymore. You're finding yourself feeling frustrated with them. And maybe it's because you've outgrown it. And making sure you are intentional about, there's a wellness wheel. If you're listening, Google wellness wheel. It's a pie chart and it's different variations of it, but it'll show you different areas of your life. And you can use that as a starting point to look at, okay, where am I financially, socially, mentally, environmentally, like looking at all the areas of your life. Like we've really got to, if we want to grow and make change. And when I say grow, I'm not saying like you got to be something like on T. Like I'm not saying that. I'm just saying grow. Like there's a lot of people. They don't have like a big bank account, big house, but they have a lot of peace and happiness. Yes. It's, money's great, but it's not everything. And if you don't have it, it's not going to happen overnight. And not allowing that to stop you. It's really important to think about how you're being brainwashed or controlled by some of the things that you're seeing. Comparison is a joy killer. And so many people are comparing themselves to other people's stuff, not recognizing like what they have going on. So it's the first time I'm saying that out loud, but challenge yourself and start making a meeting with yourself if you have not already.
Yeah. And so like, I know personally goals I had in my 20s changed to my 30s, changed to my 40s. Like I'm so simple now. My friends laugh at me. They're just like they came by once and I had like a tea kettle. I wasn't even like, I just was making tea. I went and got a tea kettle. I actually put the tea kettle on the stove. I was like, I don't want to microwave my water anymore. I wanted this. So I was like, tea kettle, pouring tea. They're like, man, you're so old. And I was like, nah, this is relaxing to me in this space. Yeah. Because I had decided, I had a conversation with myself at some point, the way I was doing things before was fine for before. The sleep when I'm dead, grind don't stop, this, that. There was an error. There was a time. And I was just like, no.
This isn't where I'm at now. Yeah.
It's not what I want to do anymore. And so making those shifts and those changes, And both lives are acceptable. Both lives
Mhm.
are okay, whichever one that works for you. But the checking in with ourselves is important. And if we have people in our immediate world, the communication with them, because if
Mhm.
we have a spouse and we check in with ourselves and decide we've made some changes, but we haven't told them that,
Right. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
then so it's about the clear communication with those that are around us that are directly affected by those rechecking in with ourselves. And if we change that goal, that's okay.
It's totally okay. Yeah.
You know, that path you were on for the last 10 years and you're like 2024, I'm on something else. Okay.
Mhm. Don't look at it as but I already did this. It's like, if it ain't working, it's okay to start over. Like, what are they gonna think? Who cares what they're gonna think? Because guess what? On your deathbed, it ain't gonna matter.
Even if it is working, you had a successful job that pays you X amount of dollars, but
Yeah.
you'd rather start something new.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
That
okay.
that job paid you fine. The benefits
Yeah.
were fine. But you want to be an art teacher. Now you want to open a yoga studio. Now
Mhm.
you want to whatever. Like,
Mhm.
do the responsible steps attached to it. But if you
Right.
decide you want to do a different course of life, that's okay.
Mhm.
I think we run into problems when we're not honest with ourselves
Yeah.
and we'll stick with the job that pays X amount of dollars because it
Mhm.
pays X amount of dollars,
Yeah.
but it's not fulfilling.
Yeah.
We'll stay in a big house because it's a big house.
And that's what people know me to have, is this big house. They don't know
Everybody
me to
knows
have no
everybody
little
knows it's a big
house.
house, but you may want to, you're like, yeah, but I don't need all this square foot. The kids are
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
I'm not entertaining like that. I don't
Yeah.
need this big old house. Like, that's okay.
Yep.
Like, if you want to make those shifts, make those changes. Like I said, establishing what the goal is, and if the goal is changed, being honest with ourselves and with those around us, and then putting steps in place that are consistent with the goal it is that we say we want to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was such a good, refreshing conversation. I think that, as people listen to this, they're really going to think about the way that they're doing things. And because earlier you talked about why is this important
Yeah.
to me? And I think about, as we're talking in this last leg of how a lot of times it's not about it being important to them. It's in the perception, the big
Yeah.
house perception, the six figures perception. And as you get older, you realize perception doesn't matter. People say, I see it, not people. I seen a post that said, you have all these problems. You think you have 1,000 problems until your health you're struggling with your health, and then you have one. And it's really, really important to not make your decisions based off of what people will think or say,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter. If you can get to that point, I promise you'll feel so free.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not the case for a lot of people, but try to get to that point where you're challenging yourself. If you're not coming up with a clear reason why you still are in that big house and it's cleaning's hard, it's empty, you want to be somewhere else, go somewhere else.
Yeah. And those
Let them
things that
talk.
the things that we deal with this time of year, the physical ailments, the stress, the money issues, loneliness, a lot of that is the compounded results of not living in a life that's in alignment with what we want.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Yep.
spending money we don't have on things we don't need. We're surrounding ourselves with people that we don't really want to be around. We're not doing the things that are fulfilling to our spirit. So our stress levels are up. Our body is overworked. Our immune system is deficient. Just what are we being honest with ourselves and living a life that's true to us? It does clear a lot of that stuff out.
Yeah. This was good. Let people know how they can find you.
Yeah. So if you have questions on the assessment or any more information that you would like to learn about what it is, how it works, if you want to set up a 15-minute consultation, walk you through it, answer any questions, you can go to mykeystome.com. That's MYKEYSTOME, mykeystome.com. And then for everything else to find me, every social media platform is the same. It's all at J Morris CEO.